It was still spring, but I wanted to play hard, and summer was coming in 2 months. And every day, the trains ran on time. And at the new station, the new narrow gauge coaches were ready for the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Later that night, as Thomas was finishing his last train of the day, he met the errand conductor. So the new narrow gauge railway is complete and the new engine is ready. Well, it took about almost a year to get the new narrow gauge railway complete. Yeah, you're right. After the passengers got off, Thomas left to drop off Annie and Clarabelle at the shed. And it was very late by the time Thomas put Annie and Clarabelle back in the shed. Whew. Annie and Clarabelle back in the shed? Time to get some sleep. The next day, Thomas was sent to collect the new narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Meanwhile, Beresford was waiting for the boat with the new narrow gauge engine. Soon, the boat arrived with the new narrow gauge engine. Alright, Beresford, here's the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Well, I can see that. Well, I'll get him out of the boat. So, you must be the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. And who are you? My name is Luke. I'm the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. I see. Soon, Thomas arrived on the mainland. But then there was trouble. Whoa! Who goes there? Hello, Beresford. Whoa! Here we go again. Whoa! So, Thomas, I see that you're here to pick up the new narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. And I see that Luke is the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Well, you got that right, Thomas. And who is that? Oh, sorry, Luke. This is Beresford. I first met him when I took James's cars to the mainland. Nice to meet you, Beresford. And one question? What? Why do you put stuff in front of people? Well, I just want to know who they are. I see. Excuse me, but can I go back on the track now? Oh yeah, I'll do it right now. And Thomas had to turn around to get coupled up to the flatbed, and Beresford had to load Luke onto Thomas's flatbed. Alright, you can go now. Thank you, Beresford. No problem, Thomas. It was free at daytime by the time Thomas got back with the new narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. You must be Luke, the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Well, you got that right. And you'll be starting work tomorrow. Okay. The next day, Luke coupled up to his coaches at the station. Well, today is the grand opening of the new narrow gauge railway, and I'll be taking a lot of passengers today. Just then, Toby arrived with some passengers for the grand opening. So, you must be the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway. Well, you got that right, and I'll be taking a lot of passengers today because it's the grand opening of the new narrow gauge railway. And I think you'll be taking passengers all day. Yeah, you're right. Soon, the passengers got on the new narrow gauge coaches for the new narrow gauge railway, and Luke was able to pull the train. Luke was glad to be the first narrow gauge engine for the new narrow gauge railway, and we will see more of him, but that's another story.